IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hi guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. Hope you are well and keeping safe. We are delighted to be hosting Subhadip Mukherjee from IndianVagabond.com on the podcast today to talk about a very unique place in India, that is India's only Chinatown located in Kolkata. We discuss the backstory, the people, the culture, and the celebrations, and of course, the mouth-watering food. Let's hop on to the episode and find out more.
So with that introduction, we'd love to welcome back Subhadip Mukherjee from the IndianVagabond.com.
Hi Subhadip, welcome to the Musafir Stories again.
Hi. It's been long, and it's really exciting to be back with the Musafir stories and these podcasts. I really love, I follow, and these are excited to be back.
Thank you, Subhadip. We are equally excited to have you. Our previous episode with Subhadip was about Mysore.
Yeah.
So for anybody who wants to listen to it, we will add the link in the show notes section. So please go ahead and listen to that.
But today, like last time, Subhadip took us to Mysore, which is closer to where we are from, Bangalore. But today, Subhadip will act more as a local and take us to a place closer to Subhadip's home. So Subhadip, you want to tell us where you're taking us to today?
Yeah. So Calcutta, was once the capital of India, and you had different the nationalities coming. It's not the communities within India. You had the Jewish people coming, you had the Greeks coming, and amongst them, the most interesting people who are still in large numbers are the Chinese. The Chinese are still in Kolkata, and they have their own quarters. Like in other cities, in Canada, in US, in Singapore, in other places, you have got the Chinatown.
Right.
So Kolkata is the only place, and this is on record, I can say, is the only place in India where you have not only one Chinatown, but we have two Chinatowns out here.
Wow. Okay, great.
Yeah, a lot of people would not know this, but yeah, Kolkata is the only place in India where there is a significant Chinese presence in the Chinese community, and they have two Chinatowns, like Subhadip mentioned. So really
looking forward to this.
I think till Subhadip mentioned, I did not even know that Kolkata has a large population of even the other nationalities. I mean, can you tell us a little more about that, Subhadip?
Yeah, so there was once a big Jewish communities. It is dwindling, but we still have some Jewish people still in the city. And though there are no more Greeks out here, but we have the Greek church out here, and we have the Armenians. There's a significant population of the Armenians out here. So you have got the so all these communities, and of course there's a small pocket of Koreans also because of the because of the different industries, though they came much later, post independence. They came mostly due to the kind of other industries and all.
Okay.
And of course, don't be surprised, there are some Eastern Europeans also in and around the city, because of when they came into the 1960s and 70s, when lots of steel plants came in, so they came in as specialists for for expanding the steel industry. So it's kind of a mixed bag of kind of thing.
Yeah, a true melting pot.
Yeah, definitely speaks to Kolkata's rich culture and heritage, right, in terms of the different communities that are there. Just in terms of some of the background for this and the origin story, would you like to shed some light on how, like, it's surprising, right? Like the rest of the country, we don't really have any pockets of Chinese population or community living here. What's the backstory of this, Subhadip?
For that, we have to just rewind back to around 240, 250 years around kind of thing. And this has everything to do with something that we love the most. It is the sweetest thing of all. It's the sugar, actually. And as you know it, most of us, most of the regions still refer to sugar as chini.
Sure.
And chini is China. From the chini is the same thing, kind of thing.
Oh, okay, interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, so as you know, so China had been. I mean, if you go back in time, Chinese have been very much well advanced in processing sugar. Actually, the white free flowing sugar that we know that was not available in India. So if you look at the historic recipes in India, they were mostly made from the palm sugar or misri or jaggery. So we,
Right.
we, we, we were not using that white free flow, the sugar that we have it.
True.
Of course, when the East India came into in India, they were kind of expanding their business out here. And let's out here we'll just shift to kind of a kind of a global perspective and all. If you look that most of the sugar plantations historically were in the West Indies, you have the Jamaica and all that places. You had that's the reason you had slavery and all. So lots of, if you look, so lots of the for the British, they had invested in the West Indies as well as in India, but the majority of their sugars were coming from the West Indies, kind of thing. They had lots of investments were there, kind of thing. Then we had someone very kind of interesting person called the Warren Hastings, who was the Governor General of Bengal around 1778. Warren Hastings was kind of, he wanted to climb up the ladder. It's not, I mean, why to limit the, that time it was not the British Crown, it was like the East India Company, it was like the corporate. So
Right.
if you want to go up the corporate ladder, you have to produce more profit, right?
Right.
So by that time there were shipments of sugar from China to India and all. So there was this guy called Tung Achu, and the name varies actually, because historical record has his name as Yang Dazao, some calling Tung Achu, some calling Tung. So this was roughly the guy who came to Calcutta around 1780, and he just met with the governor Warren Hastings and gave him an idea like, why to import sugar from China when you can produce it locally and all. So obviously he was a businessman, he said. And obviously back then there were no one in India who had knows the process and all. And so what he thought was that, okay, let me bring around 100 laborers from China, let me set up an industry out here and let me start processing sugar. And so by bringing in you should remember back then China was more of agricultural agrarian society, where there were lots of mostly farmers, and for them it's life was better if they would have migrated to out to different. So he took a substantial amount of loan from the businessmen in Calcutta itself, and set up the sugar processing plant in a place called it's called Bajbaj. It's a place called Bajbaj. It is called Achipur now because it's named after him. But that time it was somewhere near a place called Pujali in Bajbaj, which is around 30 kilometers from Calcutta, and it is not that far if you go by road. But there is the Hooghly River actually flows just right next to it. So bringing down the sugar through the river was the kind of easy task for them. So they were like he set up the complete industry out there. So he got in. So that's the time he got around 110 Chinese laborers were got in, and he just set up a factory, and from sugar cane he started processing the sugar. And the difference of what he did was he was producing white crystal sugars out here and all. So say within the first few years they managed to produce around 2000 mounds, which is around 75,000 kilo of sugar per year.
Oh.
So and so what Warren Hastings did is that he started exporting this sugar. He never kept this sugar for the Indians. I mean, because Europe was a big market for sugar then. So he started pushing the maximum load of this sugar through to back to the European markets in UK and all that, England especially. And so what happened? There was a kind of a competition which developed. So the prices of sugar that was produced in Bengal, even after landing in the European markets, was much cheaper than the West Indies sugar and all. So this went on this went on for a long time. And then the West Indies sugar plantation owners were also British. Like they said, this is unfair. We are being taxed much higher, but the Indian sugars you're taxing them much lower, and we are suffering. And if this is how it goes, then our industry will completely collapse, and then we'll be in a soup, and all our plantation, and they had huge plantations all over the West Indies, right? So there were lots of issues, and then in UK they had this court ruling and all. They said, okay, from now onwards, I mean, there will be no tax difference, and the sugars from imported from Bengal will have to be paying the same thing. This dramatically changed the situation, because then the Bengal sugar was not worth it, because then transporting it back to UK and the European markets, it did not mean any sense.
Right.
So a byproduct of sugar is also kind of a arak kind of thing. So you can actually make a kind of a local wine kind of thing. So
Right.
uh, they started producing that also, because obviously by then they could not afford to pay off the loan, this guy. So obviously, and then so within that, it did not last long, because with the taxation coming in, so within few years the sugar plantation shut down, and then there are no record of it. The only record that still stands out there is the temple, which is there in the it's the first Chinese temple that has been built in India by those. The temple is still there, and that's the place where during every Chinese New Year, all the families of a Chinese family, they do visit, because that's the, and the deity is the same deity which was established. It's a wooden deity. It's like the male deity and the female deity, because they kind of believe in the earth god, and they have this local Chinese. Those were the same which was the temple was established by Tung Achu. So he goes back. The Chinese families go back to there to pray, and there's a tomb of Tung Achu where they need to go and pray and thank him. So this is one part of the story. So the sugar industry completely closed. The laborers were in India, and it's not that it's not easy for them to just take the next ship back to China,
Right.
because it does not make sense. So the obvious next best option is they come back to the city, and they first settle in a place like called Tiretti Bazaar. Tiretti Bazaar was once he was an Italian businessman. So he had a huge locality, and then slowly he set up a market out there, and in the market was in his name, and also a huge population initially. And then these Chinese, they had their own kind of trade kind of thing. So some were kind of carpenters, some were leather workers, some were kind of dentists. So that's the reason you have the maximum. They set up lots of Chinese churches in and around Tiretti Bazaar. Now, don't get me wrong when I say churches, because churches are temples, because the Britishers were there, so they
Right.
did not know, the Chinese did not know what to call them. So before the Christians, they had churches, so the Chinese also started calling their temples churches kind of thing. So, and these churches are unique, because there are mostly, most of them, except few of them, one or two, there are two-story kind of building and all. So on the upper floor, you would have the deity where they would go and pray and everything. On the ground floor, it was like a club.
Yeah.
So it was like a club wherein the Chinese community, they would come together and just play games, play mahjong, or just relax, or smoke hashish out there, because that was a very kind of popular kind of sport. It was just where they would just mingle around.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by the time other Chinese also, so if you have, it's like the same thing what we can see in other parts. So if you already have one community out here, so they call their relatives and all.
Right.
So people start joining in kind of thing. So what happens when what used to happen when a Chinese family or a person would come to Kolkata? First, they would report to do their this kind of different churches, and these churches were belong to different groups of people. So the dentists had their own churches, the wooden workers, they had their own. So depending on which community or which village you belong to, you would report. And they had some boarding arrangements also. So initially few days they would be sleeping and staying out there till you get a work, and then you move out, and then slowly later you bring down your family. So this is how the concept of Chinese temples evolved. So that's why if you still go to Tiretti Bazaar, there are lots of temples, and this Chinese temples or churches, whatever you can call them, and they are in very close proximity, kind of, just right next to each other. And these are like, if you enter them, it's like you are being transported in a place in actual China, because you have the same kind of the furnitures, the people, the kind of ambience, the color, mostly red, because they prefer the red color, the type of architecture of the building, and how they kind of, and they, if even for a few years back also, they had a Chinese daily newspaper, which She's unfortunately closed right now. I mean, it did not run, but they had Kolkata is a place where we still had this kind of a daily Chinese newspaper for the local Chinese community and all. But they come and just mostly kind of meet and talk, especially on the weekends. They would be coming and talking and just and this is also a place, especially where very in terms of food, they have the Chinese breakfast, which is a very popular thing, especially on the weekend. You need to go there by 7 o'clock, and these Chinese family they set up small shops out there, and you can, if you want authentic Chinese foods, you can get out there like dumplings, kind of different types of fried breads and all,
Yeah.
ham chui. These are all different kind of different Chinese foods. If you want to taste, that's the best place. And so initially they were into like as I said, they were the carpenters started opening up their own shop. They had the carpentry shop, and some shops are still there. They're mastery into carpentry and all. Then you had that group of dentists. That's the reason in Calcutta, if you see, there are lots of Chinese dentists and all. So they came and they set up their own groups and all. The dentists, they had their own temples. And then the leather workers, the specialization leather workers and all. So now the problem was that you cannot have a kind of a leather industry right in the middle of the city. So this had to be set up outskirt of the city. So that's the reason we have the second kind of Chinatown, which is Tangra. Tangra is the second Chinatown, where most of these families they set up a leather processing tanneries, and they were making shoes, belts, and all these things and all.
Okay. So, before we go to the second Chinatown, I have a couple of questions about the first one. Yeah. So, before when we were talking, you did mention a very interesting connection about the Tiretti Bazaar, right? The home it was named after. Can you please tell our listeners that, because that was pretty interesting when I got to know that through you.
Yeah. So Tiretta was a friend of a very famous or infamous person called Casanova. What we know as Casanova. So when we say about any person, oh, that guy is a Casanova, means he would be kind of flirting around lots of women and all. So Mr. Tiretta was a very close friend of Mr. Casanova, and they were in Venice. They were business together, and something historically went wrong, and then he had to shift down to Calcutta, and then he shifted to the city, and that's the reason why you have this place named after Tiretta. Actually, his name is Tiretta, but over the years, the language changed to Tiretti Bazaar. So you still have that place called Tiretti Bazaar, and the place is still named after him.
Yeah,
Interesting.
basically, Edward Tiretti or Edward Tiretta, right? That's
Edward.
Yeah, he
Edward Tiretta,
owns the place, and that's how it gets its name.
Yeah, I mean, who would think that in India we would have a place named after an Italian, a businessman, and it is filled
His
with Chinese, like Chinese descendants actually.
Like a Casanova, and the connection with
Casanova, of course,
the famous Casanova.
the famous Casanova,
Exactly. It's a really interesting story.
Wow.
But and you were also speaking about the Tiretti Bazaar is what the first, or the old Chinatown, what it's referred to
Old
as,
Chinatown.
right?
And primarily, you have got the maximum number of Chinese people settled out there.
Yeah.
In fact, that's the place you have the old Chinese restaurants also, the initial Chinese restaurants also. The oldest one, unfortunately, is they don't it does not exist anymore. The oldest oldest restaurant was so famous that Raj Kapoor, whenever he used to come to Kolkata, Raj Kapoor was if you read history also, he was a big fan of Chinese food, and he would come down to Calcutta just to have food and at that restaurant and all. That restaurant, unfortunately, is it's not there. It's just the building is there. It's just a temple and a kind of thing, but that it's not there. So that's how famous this place was. And I mean, who's who of people who used to come to the city used to have Chinese food, because that's the place where you used to get authentic Chinese food, kind of.
Yeah, definitely. So this is all about the old Chinatown, and we'll definitely come back to it and talk a little bit more. But what was the new Chinatown in Tangra that you were speaking about?
this place was very different, because if you still go around, you will have those huge kind of warehouse kind of building and all. So it's like going to a kind of industrial town. You have got multiple huge buildings, 2 to 3 story buildings with a 20 feet 30 feet high wall, and these were all individual tanneries and all. They were doing leather processing and all. So I still remember in 80s when we had to go to the airport, we had to pass near Tangra and all. And I remember it used to stink a lot, because they used to give the leather to drying and all. So, and obviously lots of environmental norms were introduced in the 90s and all. And then it was decided that in the late 80s that you cannot, because that time the city had also expanded. So that time Tangra was no more outskirts. It was a part of the city. So they said, okay, we are shifting you to another place called Bantala, which is a little far from the city. We are completely having a dedicated leather complex out there. Shift your business. So they were given compensation and land at very cheap rate kind of thing and right there. So now the tanneries had shifted, so they had these huge buildings, 2 to 3 stories, it's like huge warehouse and factories with high walls. And then what to do with that, because obviously the families were settled out here, because they used to live on the first floor and the factories were used to be on the ground floor. They cannot suddenly move to Bantala, which is another 45 minutes drive from the city. So they had the factories shifted out there, but they used to they kept staying out there. So in the 80s and 90s, some of the families, they started converting them into restaurants, So one after the other families, they said, okay, because it was a natural thing, and Chinese food was getting very popular in the city back in the 80s and 90s kind of thing. And then all these Chinese restaurants started popping up, and there I think 20-30 of the Chinese different. You have different varieties come from the very high end to the mid end. You have got different varieties of Chinese. So that became kind of a Chinese food. Tangra, I mean, stopped being referred to as a place where tanneries are there. It became a reference to the Tangra means Chinese food.
Okay.
That's how popular thing it has become right now. And it is so crowded now, especially on the weekends. You have to actually wait for your turn, and you need to wait. I mean, even after having 20-30 restaurants out there, you have to literally wait half an hour, 1 hour to just get a table out. That's how the popular it has become. It is completely the ambience kind of, they have their own kind of drive-in restaurants and all different. So and it depends. The ones which are on the outer near the road, they're more mixed Indian version of the Chinese, where you get the different flavor. And the more inner you go, the more you have those traditional Chinese, which is more of kind of a boiled kind of noodles. So it depends on which kind of Chinese types of Chinese food you like. So you need to choose a restaurant accordingly. And so this became like a more of a known for its food places. Though there are some still there are 2 or 3 Chinese restaurants in the old Chinatown, but Tangra became the primary source of all Chinese food. That's how the popularity began. And then obviously the community, I mean, they were completely disconnected from China, so they became more of Indian kind of thing,
Right.
And trust me, if you speak to them, because they had a lot of when they were working at these tanneries, they had these laborers who were mostly from the UP and Bihar. So that's why they speak fluent Hindi.
Okay.
Absolute the fluent Hindi with the Bhojpuri kind of accent. They know how to speak. That's how they're. So that's because obviously they need to speak to their laborers
Right.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So they are very so in fact more than Bengali, most of them are very fluent in Chinese and kind of Hindi, and then comes English. So that's the level of the
Wow.
fluency.
Okay, that's very interesting. And just in terms of the size of the Chinese community here, right, Subhadip, like, how has this been? Like, how maybe at its peak, how much was it, and what is the current status? Like, is this still a bustling community, or have we seen like these numbers decline over time?
See, in the everything just they were post independence. pre-independence, they were in a huge number, and back then, the Chinese, they were migrating to India in huge, large numbers, and that's one more thing I'll talk about the Ramgarh cemetery at the end. Though you'll get the connection, because a lot of these Chinese, they were coming to migrating to India, and especially Calcutta, because they were literally earning in fortunes out here. Because back there in China, they were the revolution, kind of Chinese revolution, where you have the kind of a different regime, where you had to kind of, the communist regime had stopped. There were limitations to what you can earn, what you can do. So for them, it was better to stay back in India. They were thriving. But this all changed during the in the 60s, the war with China.
Right, 1962.
Absolutely, it went haywire, because obviously it's a kind of the same thing that you can see it everywhere. So suddenly, when the war started, and it went to chaos. I have heard my father and my grandmother telling that there were Chinese banks also, so they were completely looted and broken down, and so all these, nobody trusted the Chinese then, because obviously they thought, okay, they were spying for the Chinese government and all. So all of these Chinese people, they were rounded off, and they were shifted to all the place in a village called Deoli in Rajasthan. So there have been lots of books. So they were completely, and they were put in that it's like prison camp, and then and they stayed there for years. Then obviously the war died down, they came back, but by that time a lot of damage had been done. So a huge population of Chinese, they migrated out of. They could not go back to China, because I spoke to a lot of these Chinese people as to they have been back to China and to find their ancestors, to their own village. They find a complete disconnect, because they culturally they have completely changed. In fact, one of them told me that I could hardly understand the Chinese that they were speaking, because obviously dialect became so different. Obviously, after so many years, you adapt to a different culture completely. So post that, in the 60s and 70s, the Chinese communities, they started migrating to Canada, to Australia, to Middle East, kind of thing. And then obviously the population started completely dwindling, and that's the reason when I was checking out I was doing the blog about the Chinese cemeteries of the city. There were 6 to 7 cemeteries, and one thing I was just counting the the year of the deaths. So in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 1960s, you had lots of burials, or because that's the date written. But as the year progresses, the number of burials have also decreased, which is absolutely telling the truth as to the declining number of the Chinese communities.
Interesting way of looking at it. And even while I was trying to look this up, it was I believe it's around 2000 or even lesser now.
Approx that's the number, but still it is large, because since they are in a small pocket within Tiretti Bazaar and Tangra, that's why they are so visible. But if they would have been spread across the city, they would completely be lost out completely.
That's true. Thanks so much. Really some eye-opening details there in terms of the origins, the backstory, and also some very surprising connections to some of the names, right? So thank you for calling all of those out. Now, just kind of double-clicking a little bit on Tiretti Bazaar and Tangra, right? Those are the two Chinatowns that we mentioned. Do you want to call out a little bit more about the Tiretti Bazaar's famous breakfast markets? Because those are very, very popular, right? And very unique.
So if you want to experience the breakfast market, I would suggest you go on a Sunday, because the rest of the weekdays it will be difficult, because Tiretti Bazaar is also kind of the heart of the city, where it's a bustling business. So reach there by 6:30 in the morning, and you would be completely surprised. You will see lots of these small temporary shops which have been set up, and you can easily make out that these are kind of Chinese food, because apart from the kachori and samosa which other vendors are selling, these really look different. So you have the fried dumplings, which is the kind of momo you can call out, all the steamed version, and you have got the shrimp puri. Then you have got the very famous Chinese sausages, which look very different, which will be hung on a red thread. Then obviously the pao or the bun, steamed buns, they're very famous. So you have got different kinds of veg, meat, and fish. They have different kinds of fillings. So it's not for only even vegetarians can go out there, because there are lots of it's a wrong thing if we completely put the Chinese foods are absolutely non-veg. There are lots of vegetable items also.
Mm.
Like then you have got the noodle soup, then you have got the rice puddings, which are kind of with it's like a sweet kind of thing filled with jaggery and all. Then they have got the stuffed buns
Mm.
and the fish rolls, the chops. Then you have those vegetable dumplings which are covered on those yams and different kind of veggies and all. Then you have got something called the ham choy, which have the cabbage leaf, and they have the sticky rice inside. Then you have kind of the different kinds of breads also, because they have this they fried breads. That's a popular dish of the kind of thing. And you have got the roasted meat. So if you're depending on what type of meat you prefer, you can just have it out there. And remember, this market stays alive. I mean, is just for the next it stays, say, 6:30 to 7:38, and the
Yeah.
market packs up.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because then this becomes a parking lot kind of thing. So if you're late, you just see cars and motorcycles out there and all.
Yeah, basically street market, right? And it is open only for a couple hours early in the morning, and yeah, they're basically done by that time. It's not that they just close up.
Yeah.
Pretty popular and very unique concept again. Like we don't have a lot of these, and especially Chinese, like we said, you don't really find them a lot. So definitely do check that out while you're in the vicinity. And the other thing I also saw was, like you mentioned, after this time, there's also, or maybe alongside the food market or the breakfast market, there's also like vegetable and fish shopping one can do, right? So come have your fill early in the morning, eat your breakfast, and then shop for vegetables, fish, whatever you'd like
So
to.
this is like a temporary shops that are set up
Right.
out there. It's like you can just have your breakfast, and for a Sunday, whatever vegetable you need for the week, just do your packing. You can easily park your vehicle out here and then pack up and just pack things up. And they have also started selling I mean, half prepared stuffs, like you can take back those items and then fry it at your home at your convenience and have them. So these kind of and one more thing, it is completely forgot. I mean, it's just not the carpenters, the tanners, the dentists, which are Chinese. There's one more community which is very famous, the laundrymen. So you have a lot of this, lots of Shanghai dryers and cleaners all over the city, kind of thing. So these were another group of people who had come down post, mostly during the independence and all. So they were mostly, Shanghai was kind of next to the kind of sea, the water. So they had what business they started doing their laundry business and all. So that's the reason there are lots of, you would think that they are same name, the Shanghai dry cleaners and washers. It's like the bandbox of
Yeah.
the Chinese version, kind of. It's around the city.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting indeed. And do you also want to, like, you gave us a little bit of a background about Tangra, the tanneries that were initially there, and how slowly they kind of transformed into almost like the Chinese restaurant or the Chinese food scene, right? Do you want to call out some of the popular restaurants in Tangra or the new Chinatown, Subhadip?
In Tangra, the restaurants are Big Boss, Beijing. These are very popular restaurants out there and all. And the best thing is you can see the moment you enter with your car, and these places all have parking and all. So Beijing and Big Boss, and these are two the very famous one out there. Can usually people, but there are other places like Hot Walk and more kind of traditional ones also. So more or less out of within, as you enter the Chinatown, you would find the top 4 or 5 restaurants out there itself. So and one tip that I would give you is that the portions are in huge. So if you are 3 person, please do not order for 3 plates of noodles. You will be unable to finish that. Order for one. You try, if you want more, order the second round, because the portion sizes are very different. I mean, so if you are 2 or 3 person, obviously order one dish at a time rather than counting by the number of heads. Otherwise, you'll be overwhelmed by the amount of food that you're served.
What has been your favorite restaurant? I mean, your favorite dish, Subhadip?
So for me, it has to be kind of every restaurant. So if you go to the restaurant, they'll have their signature
Right.
noodles. Can always try that, because that's the if you are into mixed meat, do inform them, because they have got mixed meat out there. Or if you do not want to eliminate some of the particular meat items, you just tell them, they'll prepare it accordingly.
Okay.
And something which you must try, I mean, I just love them, is that prawn papad. I don't know how that.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's prawn papad is something which is very popular, and that's the starter. You would find every table have those white big prawn papas and all. So it's shrimp paste. It's like the papas. It's like sabudana papa made with shrimp paste kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So it's like a unique flavor that they have, and it's really lovely, and that's the best way to start. And then you have those spring rolls, which is obviously very nice, and then you have the different sweet and sour kind of thing, and then and then you have got the during the season you have got the whole roast ducks and all those Peking ducks. So depending on the especially during New Year, Chinese New Year, they expand their menu.
Right.
So there would be a rush, but don't miss that period, because you would be able to enjoy lots of ambience, lots of local Chinese dance flavors and all. And although obviously the food is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. And Subhadip, if I'm to understand correctly, is the origin of Hakka version of Chinese also from this area? I'm not quite sure, but I did come across a couple of instances where it was mentioned that the Hakka Chinese that is very popular these days, I guess all over India, right? It's almost
The
like
Indian Chinese
yeah,
version.
Indian Chinese version that also like has its origins from the Chinatown of
Yeah.
Kolkata.
So I had asked this question to one of my Chinese friend who had gone back to his own hometown in China, and I asked him that what is the style of Hakka out there. They said it's very different. But when they came to India, they adopted the Hakka style that the noodles that we good the Hakka that we know. That's what got adopted out here. I mean, lots of kind of they add the soya sauce, vinegar, and make it into kind of brownish, and then you
Right.
put on the vegetables and make it into a fried mixture kind of thing. So that's how because obviously for the Indian taste, if you go for the very traditional noodles, you will not, because it's a more of a boiled, or it will be extremely spicy kind of thing, and you have to dip them in different sauce to have it. That's not the way the Indians would be able to have it. So,
Right.
and obviously since they were also staying in India, they got used to the spicy food of the city. So their taste buds also kind of changed. So that's how the Hakka style that we kind of know of, which is available across the country, it's kind of finds its origin from the city, because they started modifying their
Sure.
version of Hakka to that it's more of a palatable to the Indian customers, and that's how it became kind of very popular.
Yeah, that's very,
Interesting.
very interesting. So, thank you so much for beautifully calling of all of these things. Now, just in terms of a good time to visit,
Yeah, when would be a good time for a tourist to visit?
Kolkata becomes very hot during the summers, and winters is the time to visit Kolkata. And the best time would be the end of January or beginning of February, because that's the time the Chinese have their Lunar New Year, the Chinese New Year.
Yeah, we were just about to get to that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the time when the city absolutely Tiretti Bazaar and Tangra it goes crazy. Kind of they have that red and yellow decorations and all. They have these Chinese gates and all, and then they have the procession. Different clubs, different teams. They come out. They do the lion dance. They do the dragon dance, and you have the speakers blasting all Chinese traditional music. So you feel like as if you're a part of the kind of you are not in India anymore. That's the thing, and then the Chinese New Year is just not one day. So it's the festivity starts the day before, when all the lion dance they gather, especially in Tangra, because it's like Tiretti, the space is very limited because it's more of a business district. So in Tangra they have lots of space, so different lion dance group they come. And they have a tradition, they'll go to the temple first, pray out there in the Chinese temple, and then they come to a kind of a crossroad where they will start performing.
Okay.
And the performance kind of starts with the mega performance is the kind of the lion run, where it's like the Chinese community out there, the clubs, they burn thousands of crackers together, and the lion dancers have to dodge all those crackers and run along with their drums and along with their costumes. Whoever reaches first the kind of the end line, they get a big reward, which is they get a good amount of money. And so this is the day one, and day two on the Chinese. They have their family Chinese New Chinese New. They have their family meal kind of thing, which is very important, and they pray for their ancestors. And in the Chinese community, praying for the ancestor is a very, very important thing, because they would be offering incense stick, they'll be offering wine, they'll be offering food, because and they'll be burning paper money and kind of thing, so that it reaches the heaven. And if the ancestors are happy, they believe that they would be happy, because they'll be blessing them. That's the thing, and they would be praying to their every community, they have their own god. Though it is interesting that most of the Chinese in India are Christians, but they have this kind of, traditionally they have stuck on to some of their specific Chinese cultures. So religious wise, they might be going to a church on Sunday, but the kind of traditional practices, luckily it's very nice that they have not forgotten. They keep doing that kind of thing. And on the day of the Chinese New Year, and the next day, the lion dancers would be visiting each house to bless, and then they'll be performing, and then they'll be blessing, and then they'll be receiving money from the house owners in red envelopes.
Okay.
So these are kind of very interesting. And then they'll have the next that weekend, usually the Chinese New Year weekend on Saturday Sunday, they have the big fete at the Chinese school out there, in Tangra, where they have the Chinese song performance and all the dance. They perform dance, and they have the different lots of shops, the temporary shops are set up to sell Chinese foods and all. And don't be shocked if it's on the cultural night, if a Chinese guy gets up and starts Hindi numbers and all.
That would be
So
brilliant. Yeah.
they would be singing the latest song of Badshah. So that's how they have adopted. They do sing the Chinese song. So, but obviously that's how the culture has evolved. They have become like more of they are Chinese, but they are Indians also. So that's what we should not forget.
Yeah, definitely heartwarming to see all of these. And like to your point, not only is like weather-wise, it's very suitable and pleasant to visit during this time of the year, right? Late Jan, early Feb. But also in terms of the New Year, it happens to be the Chinese New Year as well.
Yes.
And a great way for also like people to kind of get first-hand experience of some of the traditions, right, of the ethnic Chinese people. Like you're mentioning, a lot of these you don't. I mean, if you're visiting during the rest other times of the year, you may not necessarily be exposed to a lot of these beautiful the lion dances or the dragon dance or these different things they do in terms of the run and everything, right? So that you mentioned. So it's a great
correct.
time to visit for you, not just to enjoy the place, but also like get first-hand experience of a lot of these lovely traditions. You did make some fleeting references about the Chinese temples and how they're different. Do you want to call out some important names, Subhadip, if you've had a chance to visit some of these, or like where are these primarily found? Are these more in
I
Tiretti?
would. Yeah, if you are visiting Chinese temples, the old ones and the main ones are in Tiretti.
Okay.
So if for food you go to Tangra, for temples you go to the Chinese temples of Tiretti. You have got the Siep Church, the Tungun Church, Jihing Church, Sivoy, Chungethong, Namsun Church. Namsun is one of the oldest church out there. So these are the kind of these are the places, and it's well marked. So if you go to Tiretti, and these people are very helpful. So if you go to one church and ask them, it's within, I think within 200 meters you have all these churches, maximum number of all these churches in Tiretti. So that's the place where you need to be if you want to visit the Chinese temples. And obviously, if you are coming during the Chinese New Year, that's the best time to visit the Baj, the original, the place where, because as within that week also, it's a tradition. Within that weekend, usually the Chinese family, they do visit their ancestors, because that's at Baj where they had the sugar plantation, the sugar factory. The temple is still there. They do go and pray, and they do go pray at the tomb of Tungachu, which is just located next to the Hooghly River. So it's a fantastic view, and it's like a different. And sometimes if you're lucky, you can see the lion dancers performing right next to the Hooghly River, which is the Ganges River, next to a Chinese Chinese tomb. So it's like a fantastic. I mean, that's the spirit of the city. You can say.
I mean, I think I could confidently say that it's probably one of the things that is unique about India, right? Only in India you could find, like you said, on the banks of the Ganges, the traditional Chinese lion dance or dragon dance being performed. So I think that's really a great sight to behold. And also one really unique temple I came across was the Chinese Kali temple in Tangra, I believe.
Oh, yes.
Do you want to speak about that?
Okay, so and the best part is during Chinese New Year, that's the crossroad. When I said the crossroad is actually, that's a landmark. There is a Chinese Kali temple out there, and that's the place where when they have the lion run, That's the ending point. So that's the place you have to stand and see that line, and that's the crossroads, and that's the where the maximum crowds are there. So see, a lot of when they came to Calcutta, it's not that. So there were few families who have adopted to the Indian religion also, and a few families who had a kind of, they had started their own started worshipping Kali, and so they had they had built a Kali temple. And the best thing about the Chinese community is that even though they may belong to a different religion, but they do pay respect to every religion. So it's not, whenever you see a kind of someone passing by the Kali temple, they do bow their heads and go. It's not that only and they do bow their heads at the church also, at their traditional Chinese temple also, and in front of their elders' photo and memories also. So that's how kind of it's built. So it's very funny. So it's I mean, people just, that's the place they just look up, and there's a board out there, Chinese Kali temple, and you would be shocked to see a Chinese guy with agarbatti and playing doing arti in front of Kali.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. If you really want to on the day of Kali Puja, during Diwali, that's a sight to
Yeah.
visit, be to see a Chinese guy praying in front of Chinese families praying in front of Kali. But that's how the thing is.
Yeah.
That's how the spirit of
And
the city
I don't
is.
know how much truth there is to it, but is it true that they serve noodles as prasad in that temple?
They not as
Really?
prasad, but there are actually, as you see, whenever you if you go to, especially during New Year, so whenever the Chinese, when they are paying respect, they offer food and wine kind of thing. And so for when they are doing for Kali kind of thing, they do have the traditional prasad also, but it's the food that you cook at your home that you present to the
Got
god,
it.
right?
Right.
So that's it's not the hakka chow that you could get on the street. It's more of a kind of a traditional
Home
Okay.
cooked meal.
thing out
Yeah.
there. Yes, home cooked meal. That's the same thing that you can also see during other ceremonies, like the kind of the sweeping festival that they have there. All the Chinese family, they go to their tomb of their ancestors. They would be offering them wine, cigarettes, and food, and then praying and burning paper money kind of thing. So there are different kind of festival. Then there's something very unique called the Elders Day, which I don't think in any other culture it's there. It's the day they kind of they thank the elders of the community. They gift different kind of gifts to the elders. They thank them, they feed them. So that's a Chinese elder day. That's another big festival. And past few years is another thing, which is the Chinese dragon boat festival. So that's usually happens in the month of the monsoon months, in the May June kind of month. So they have the dragon boats and all. They do the different Chinese groups, they race among themselves, and that's also a sight to see in a lake. Different Chinese guy,
Yeah.
and you have the Chinese dragon boats being pedaled by Chinese people, and it's like it's a unique thing, you know.
Yeah.
And there's one more thing, this I just wanted to add kind of thing. So it's the line dance is not about only about the Chinese community. As I said, lots of people from Bihar and UP were working in them. So don't be surprised if the lion dancers, when they open a mask, you see not a Chinese guy but an Indian guy, because they have become part of their family. It's a kind of, they stay together, they live together. The families, the owners, the Chinese families live on the upper floor, and these families live on the ground floor. So it's a kind of family festival for them.
Yeah, really marvelous to learn all of these
Yeah.
intricacies, and just eye-opening, a lot of these things, and heartwarming also, right, to know about how one these traditions have been maintained, and also how they've very nicely blended in with the Indian culture also, right, to some extent, like you mentioned. So really, really good to find out about all these things. Is there any other call-outs or any other points you'd like to mention?
Last, but I mean, it's not in Calcutta, but just outskirts. I mean, it's a small place in a town called Ramgarh, which is in Jharkhand, which is very near to Dhanbad. Dhanbad, it's between Dhanbad and Bokaro. It's a place where there is a huge Chinese World War cemetery, because during the World War II, there were around 15-20,000 Chinese soldiers who had come down to India to train. They were trained by the American, the British, and the dead, they're buried in India. So it's a kind of very 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 interesting thing to see that during the World War, it's not the we only think about the Europeans, the war in Normandy and all.
Yeah.
Lots of Indians, lots of Chinese, and a huge population of Chinese. There are hundreds of burials out there. All were martyred during the World War II, and so that's kind of the spirit of the kind of not only the city but of the nation. And uh, the connection between India and China is just not about Tiretti Bazaar. This that it's about a lot of this historical connection. It's great kind of thing. I mean,
Yeah. And thank you for kind of beautifully calling out a lot of these things, right? It's easy to forget. And also, I mean, these days, as everybody know, we are not having the best of relations with China. But again, to know that there is a community, albeit much smaller these days, but again, there is a community that has blended in and stayed here and calls Kolkata home. Right, to know that about this, because I'm very sure, like a lot of us won't know that there is a Chinatown within India, right? So to know about that and so beautifully explain not just the places and the wonderful food and their cuisines, but also their festivals and traditions and a lot of interesting backstories. You did it so beautifully, Subhadip. Thank you so much. And for anybody who is, you already have a flavor of Subhadip's great storytelling skills. He also has some brilliant photographs to back these up, and you can find all of them on his blog, the IndianVagabond.com. Right, Subhadip, I got that right?
Right.
So we'll make sure we'll link that as well. Any final call outs in terms of how people can follow you, Subhadip, besides your blog, that you'd like to share with us, please?
So you can follow me. You can on Facebook. You can search for Subhadip Mukherjee. Obviously, you can find my Indian Vagabond logo on the banner. That's and I'm on there. I'm there on. Once you get to the website, it's better to go to the website because out there you have got link to my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram and YouTube channels and all. And so you can completely get in, and my email ID is listed out there also. So please feel free to kind of WhatsApp me or call me and to ask if you're visiting, planning anything to do with the city, not only about Chinese, anything. Please feel free to drop me a kind of a mail or send a hi on WhatsApp. I will be very happy to assist you with all the information and all the details.
Thank you, Subhadip. Thanks a lot. We will add all these details in our show notes section so that it's easy for the listeners to head over and connect with you. So, thank you so much for taking us on this.
Thanks a lot.
On this journey that at least I personally had no idea about. Chinatown in India is amazing.
And it was also great connecting back with you. Like I said previously, talking about Mysore, it was good memories, reminiscing those, and now we are talking about Chinatown, a place that's much closer to you, much closer to home for you, right? So hearing from the perspective of a local as well was really great. So thank you so much, Subhadip. Looking forward to following your stories.
Thank you.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.